Eastbourne, and it was stinking hot. And I can remember getting quite sunburned lying on the beach, being very casual about things, as schoolboys are. The point that makes me remember is that we were coming down a hill, and we entered a town. And I remember my friend saying to me, he said, we're going through Lewes. That's the hanging town. And he said it with grave reservations that perhaps we should take the chance of cycling through this town on the way to Eastbourne. Anyway, we did when we arrived safely in Eastbourne. But the interesting thing is that I had no notion whatsoever that some 40 or so years later I would end up living in Lewes, the hanging town. And I write articles for the local magazine, Town and County. It's a very good magazine, actually. It's been going for well over a year now, and it has hit the spot in terms of the content that it has. Most people like it. The publisher, an editor, is a rather controversial chap, but a very nice and generous and gentle chap, actually, as indeed most controversial people are. Why we controversial people are picked on, I don't know. It's probably because we express views that other people don't find particularly comfortable. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I write for Town and County. So as a consequence, I am always researching old stories about history, modern and old and very old, of Lewes. And indeed it was a hanging town. And this led not only to these articles that I write, historical articles, but to making the documentary which we called The Bloody Past of a Tiny Town. And it's still going. You can still find it on telly from time to time. And it is very successful. So all sorts of funny things happen in your youth, and you have no idea that what's going to happen later on is cutting across you when you're cycling at 15 and wondering whether Eastbourne was ever going to come into sight. Interesting town, Lewes. A very interesting town. And actually, if you start to the last article that I wrote for Town and County, and it was one of as a magazine, it didn't come out monthly, but it did come out regularly during lockdown. So the last issue, I wrote an article about Lewes, Delaware, and Lewes, Delaware is very interesting too. It's had its traumas. I mean, it was sacked by Indians. It was sacked by some of our own soldiers. It had pestilence and all sorts of things before it became a proper town. But it managed to get cracking, and there it is today. And it describes itself. At one time, it was the county town for East Sussex, in fact, in the United States. And it was founded by William Penn and named by William Penn, who spent a lot of time in Lewes because he was a Quaker. And Lewes, being Lewes, was a hotbed of rebelliousness, even in religion, and we were the headquarters of the English Quakers for many, 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 many years. And there is still a house of friendship and still a great presence of those Quaker days when William Penn, who founded or named Pennsylvania, spent his time in Lewes. But in Lewes, Delaware, British men of war actually fired on the town in the War of 1812 against the Americans because he demanded that his ship should be reprovisioned. He wanted a couple or so bullocks and a couple or so pigs and some hens and some vegetables and so on, for which he would pay on the spot, he said. But get them down to the ship and load them. And the townsfolk, who were very, very American, they described themselves as the first town of the first state. And their reply was, bugger off, dear boy, we're not going to do that. So he fired on the town and managed, in this great conflagration, to injure a pig and a chicken and knock a couple of spires off a church. It was some battle. the Battle of Lewes there and the Battle of Lewes here, two very different things. But anyway, there we are. That's Lewes, Delaware, and there's still a cannonball stuck in the stairway of one of the houses, which they carefully preserve. They're not going to let it go. And to remind them of the day that Lewes, Delaware came under fire from a British man-of-war. I don't know. I've never been there. I'd like to go. If you say you're a Brit in Lewes, Delaware, whether in fact they sort of turf you out of the pubs or whatever. But there is a civic interest. The mayor of Lewes Town Council and the mayor of Lewes in Delaware do meet from time to time, and there is a civic connection. We just don't make a great deal of it, and perhaps we should. Perhaps that's something that would turn both communities away from the dreaded virus and give us some sort of drive to get ourselves out of the sombre mood. Because sombre mood it is. And one of the things that is concerning people is mental health. There was enough stress in our society for mental health to be of great concern. And now people really are talking about, having been talking to the walls for so long, is that they find it difficult to talk to anybody else. The mental stress that is arising, particularly from people who are locked down in solitude, is quite alarming. And what I find even more alarming is that despite the fact that we hear about Prince William and the government splashing out cash and local people are all trying hard to help, mental health issues, is there not? It's all a veneer. I don't think that Prince William does it thinking that he's a sham. On the contrary, I think he just isn't told that, to be quite honest with you, it is so far has been a waste of cash, a waste of space, because all the things that they say should happen never filter down. And we still, as a race, will duck and dive not to meet odd people in the street. We don't want to. We don't care about it. Look, there's old Nancy coming down. Cross to the other side of the road. She'll start to talk to you. Had an instance of that yesterday, sitting outside a cafe. And there's a chap that is, let's say, a little odd. I suppose I'm being politically incorrect, and I don't care. I'm too old not to worry about those sort of things, which are for the young, because they get their knickers into a twist about these things instead of being sensible about them. But anyway, so a chap came along and nobody wants to talk to him. Everybody dives in the opposite direction. Luckily, my colleague Annie and I were sitting there having just a nice little glass of wine and a bit of a salad, late salad, because we worked until 4 o'clock before we took a break. But along he came, and we had a nice chat to him, and off he went, perfectly happy, while most people had hidden under the table and dashed in the opposite direction. So as a nation, you know, we talk up a great storm, but there are some things that we are very bad at. And we don't recognise mental illness. All we know is there's somebody who causes problems, or who's going to treat or deal with this person this time. That's the way that we are. So don't tell me, and I'm pretty close to it, don't tell me that mental health issues have been overcome. Now, the way that we actually describe this radio station, this radio channel, would make you think, I suppose, that we've got issues here because we're all as daft as brushes. And in fact, we're coming through now. It's 6:55, and we've only 24 minutes we've been going, and I've only played one record. So let's have a look at something else. Something called "It Was a Fine Day." I wonder if it was. Let's have a go. I haven't got the author of this. was a fine day, and indeed it is a fine day out there. It looks like it's going to be terrific again today. Worth getting out, at least getting a bit of sun in it, somewhere or another. Anyway, we will see what the day brings, because it is a day of decision. Today we lay plans for the new Mirador television, for the new Rouser radio, and any additions that we feel that we should make to keep you all happy and bubbling. And one of the things that we're going to look at is how do we extend our distribution. We're worth watching, and we're slowly gaining an audience. It's building, but letting people know in this mass of social media, where there are millions and millions of people all spouting their stuff, isn't as easy as it may appear. Yes, you can turn out something that's good, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to watch or listen. And in the modern era, they don't listen for very long anyway. But we deliberately are targeting the over 40s, who may think a little bit more like the people that are involved in Mirador television and Rouser radio. So we hope that perhaps we can start to aim more directly at you, the over 40s. We look forward to. We don't care. We'll take a baby of 3 months of age if it perks up at the sound of our voices. But generally speaking, it is. We talk and we look at the sort of things that are for those people who the government say are the first to be locked up again if there's a coronavirus. Oh boy, are they backpedaling on that. But, somebody somewhere said, tell you what, the over 50s, it just shows you the nonsensical approach that modern youth has. And modern youth are in the government. The Americans, I said to somebody, whether it was still in place that you had to be over 40 to run for the presidency and the vice presidency of the United States. And I hope it is, and I hope that we would bring back something like that. Because we desperately need it. We desperately need to put some sort of tap on the way that democracy has allowed us to get out of kilter, and it's nothing to do with ethnicity or colour or religion or any of the things which people stamp their little feet about. It's all to do about generations. And with that somber note, I'm going to leave you this morning. Hopefully, when I come back next week, I'll be here tomorrow morning. When I come next week, we'll have laid out a plan, and I shall sound much more positive and much happier. I'm going to go out with Dandelion Charm this morning, because I just love them. They're terrific. Out of New Haven, here they are, Dandelion Charm. And this is Keith Hayes from Lewes in East Sussex saying toodle pip for today.